Hey everyone, it's Ula here, and today I've got the weirdest custom painting video I've ever made. Honestly, I feel kinda stupid having this ridiculous horse as the first repaint episode on this channel. Like, believe me, I usually paint normal horses, really, but yeah, it is what it is. For the context, this model is a late gift from my friend Jaśmina, also known as Three Slavic Horses. She's an amazing artist, she can paint, she can sculpt, so making a custom model horse for her was an easy choice. Not so easy on the color department though. But then I discovered that Jaśmina loves more animals than just horses. Like cods. No reason, just cods. So I came up with the idea to paint a model horse into a codfish. Buckle up, it's gonna get weird. I chose Papa's Appaloosamer as a base for this exceptional project. There's no backstory this time, Jaśmina just likes this mold a lot. Before we paint, we need to tackle all the imperfections, like factory seams, etc. Luckily, these seem to be quite minor on this one. I start the prepping process by shaving off bigger chunks of plastic with an x-acto knife. The worst areas are usually the legs, hooves and central part of the face. I also remove the factory marks from the belly. Prepping is pretty boring to watch, so it's just a short portion of this video, but in real life it takes a lot of time. A well-prepped canvas makes the paint job shine. When I removed the larger imperfections, I grab my needle files and sand down all of the rough surface. I switch in between tools all the time, using what I feel is best at the moment. To finish the prep job, I take some sandpaper and really smooth out the plastic. I start with a pretty rough grit, working my way up to some very fine ones. And while I'm doing that, I'd like to remind you that all the materials I'm using in this video can be found in the description box. And there we go! At this point I don't really see more imperfections, so it's time to give the model a thorough bath. Washing the surface with dish soap is super important, as it removes all of the dust and grease. We don't want to have all that trapped under the paint. I give the model a good old scrub, rinse and let it air dry. From now on, I'm only going to touch it with gloves on, up until I'm finished. I'm also accidentally matchy-matchy today. I've been testing this primer recently and can happily report it works great. I spray the model with a thin coat, rotating it around and shaking the can occasionally. One coat isn't enough to cover up those dark spots, but more than enough to make all of my mistakes visible. Yep, back to the prepping stage we go. Don't worry, it's completely normal to work back and forth like this. Sometimes it takes many rounds. When I'm finished with that, I spray the model with 2 more coats of primer and prepare myself some pastels by shaving them to dust with a blade. I'll be honest with you, I had no clue how to translate a codfish color into a horse form. My time was also limited, so I had to make it up as I go. Cods have that signature white line going along their sides, so let's start with that. I lightly trace the shape with a watercolor pencil and... Nah, I don't like it, I gotta come up with a different solution. To give myself some time to think, I switch my attention to the horse's head. I added some pinkish tones to the muzzle and really started to look closely at the reference picture. Placing all those colors and spots in the right place was quite the task, until I realized that there is no right or wrong way to do this. I can't make a mistake painting a cod horse because it's all up to me how it's going to look. And with this mindset, the whole deal just got a lot easier. I added some yellow ochre to the sides of its head and some grey around its eyes and inside of the ears. Then dark brown along the top of the head and also a bit of off-white color to tone down the blinding whiteness of my primer a bit. And I figured out a technique for the rest of the body. I'm gonna attempt those spots like they are a very unique dappling. Starting with some burnt sienna along the sides. Then added some more ochre and blended those together. Then more of that same off-white to the belly and more dark brown at the very top line. To achieve that dapple-ish look, I removed the loose pigments with an eraser. Yes, that is in fact a very handy eraser, not a pencil. I usually would use a kneaded eraser for the dapples, as this one is too harsh, but in this situation it worked perfectly. And also making this white line was a lot easier this way. When I'm done with erasing, I flick off the eraser shavings with a soft fan brush. Hey, it looks promising! Before I started the other side, I dedicated some time to the white parts of my horse. Fish? Animal, I suppose. And let's continue with its spots on the other side. I wasn't really sure what to do about the legs, so I just slapped on some brown and white pastels to the fetlocks. Looks okay, I guess. And there we go, we're finished with the first layer of pastels. Let's seal them in place. I spray on a thin coat of sealant, just like I did with the primer, and let it dry completely before moving on. The next layer is there mostly to create more opacity. I applied the same colors as before and traced the existing white lines with my eraser. Luckily, they're pretty easy to spot from under this pastel dust. Not counting the brown, it was a bit tricky to retrace the pattern, so I had to look a bit closer. Quite literally, as you can see. Well, creating an intricate organic pattern turned out to be a lot easier than tracing all over it again. And here I came across an unexpected issue. My cod looks like a giraffe. I blame the horse's body shape more than the paint job though, but I had to investigate, so I went to the zoo with my friends. We all agreed that it is not the cod that resembles a giraffe. Giraffes are just land cods. Let's get back to work. I tried to add the head spots with the same technique as I used on the rest of the body, but it wasn't nearly precise enough. Acrylics it is then. I also worked a bit more on the muzzle, adding new colors and building up opacity of those already on. And with that, the pastel stage is done. Let's seal the model again and move on to the acrylics. I immediately wanted to push my new model towards the fish area more than giraffe area, so I started with the eyes. First, a base layer of black and 2 coats of yellow. I left quite a thick outline of black there to make the eye look even more fish-like. Although my base model's eyeballs are pretty convex as they are. To make a round pupil, as opposed to the usual elongated one, I used this nail art dotting tool. And it looks so silly, it made me laugh during painting. Time to add more spots. I simply paint dots of varying sizes onto the head with a sable brush. I try not to think too much about it, to make them look a bit random. You can see me using different colors here, as I want the head to match the body, of course. Let me just quickly add some details around the muzzle, and continue with more freckles. Having my acrylics out, I decided to darken some spots along the top line and went over the white line with an off-white paint to increase the contrast. Time for hair, which in this case is going to be fins. I start with a dark brown base, applying it with multiple thin coats to prevent any lumps and clots from happening. Then I added some green at the tip of the tail and blended it with the brown to create a smooth transition. Then I repeat all of that on the mane. When the base is completely opaque, it's time to add details. I apply a very dark, almost black paint into the crevices and some yellowish green to the very tips of the hair. This way our fins gain more dimension. I also applied a base coat to the hooves using the same paint mixture. However, at this point I wasn't really sure how I want to make them look. Back to the fin hair! I decided to add some thin, greyish lines following the flow of the hair to really sell the illusion of a fin. think they look pretty convincing, considering I didn't resculpt anything. Coming back to the hooves again, I decided to make them quite simple. They are not too important with this custom anyway, so let's just make them look cohesive with everything else. And for the horseshoes, I couldn't just ignore them. That would make the whole custom feel incomplete to me. So let's just paint them with some metallic rose gold paint. Okay, why rose gold? Because it's pretty, that's it. As you can see, I first added a base in black, as most of the metallic paints I came across don't really have too much coverage. Even with the base layer, it took 3 coats to become fully opaque. Ta-da! That is a one stylish fish! Whew, it looks like we're nearly done. The only thing left now is to apply a protective coat of varnish. This time I'm going for a glossy effect, to mimic a slimy wet look of a fish. To be honest, applying this varnish was a bit nerve-wracking. I never used it on such a big surface before, so I wasn't sure how it's gonna behave. Luckily, after a full day of drying, it was completely fine. I apply it with thin, even coats using a flat brush. Of course, one coat isn't nearly as glossy as I want, so I ended up adding 3 more, waiting 30 minutes in between each application. Ooh, so shiny! I leave it to dry, and we're done! Alright, I must admit I'm really proud of this exceptional model. Translating a color of a completely different animal onto a horse form was such a great creative exercise. I highly encourage everyone bored with normal horse colors to take up this challenge and play around with a different animal theme. The cod-horse looks super cute and a bit ridiculous, just like I wanted. If I were to make it all over again though, I'd definitely go for more greenish hue. Maybe that would make it look less like a land cod. Anyway, Jaśmina loves it, and that's all that matters, really. And what do you think about this fish horse? I know it's not a conventional custom, so I am really curious about your opinions. Let me know in the comments. And yeah, see you again soon. Bye!